Darkseid, true form. Darkseid was not the stone-faced tyrant seen trampling through dimensions, nor the towering figure of destruction worshipped in shadow. Those were echoes, fragments of his thought made flesh. His true self, seated beyond the source, existed in the platonic realm of ideas. He was the anti-life equation incarnate, the principle of despair, the nullification of free will. His presence was not measured by what he destroyed, but by what he meant. He was the concept of control, the demand that all consciousness surrender to a single will, his. Wherever there was choice, he was its antithesis. He did not speak, he imposed. And then there was the other. The Beyonder was not formed by creation, nor evolved from some primordial force. He was what predated the Marvel Omniverse. Before the multiverse was born, before reality unfolded its boundless branches, he was, not as an entity constrained by space or linear time, but as a totality of existence, self-contained, self-aware, and separate from all that came after. When he looked upon the Marvel multiverse, he did not see complexity. He saw a toy, a singular, trivial speck of curiosity. The totality of all realities, the sum of gods and forces and infinite iterations, was a fragment of him. He was not bound to it. It was bound to him. When the Beyonder created Battleworld, he did so on a whim. When he erased beings and resurrected them, it was not effort, but amusement. Power was not his attribute. He was power. Even the living tribunal, the multiversal judge above gods, hesitated in his presence. But power, true, unfiltered power, rarely existed without the burden of self-reflection. The Beyonder grew curious. Why did this small universe of complexity fascinate him? What was it about struggle, mortality, choice, and individuality that compelled him to watch so closely, to mimic its shapes and toys? He became a questioner, not of others, but of himself. He sought purpose in a realm that did not require it, meaning in an existence that did not need it. In the shadows of metaphysical infinity, the thoughts of both beings brushed against one another. Darkseid did not ignore the ripple. He followed it like a hunter, through the membranes of creation, tracking it through the marrow of conceptual strata, until he found the anomaly, an existence not born of story or archetype, but something else. A god who was not part of the chain, yet observed it. A sovereign not of form, but meaningless meaning. It was an affront. It was autonomy, unshackled by fear. The Beyonder in turn saw a strange darkness approaching. Not darkness as absence, but darkness as decree. A reality that insisted not on emptiness, but on domination. Anti-life. They met not in a battlefield, but in the space where truths crystallize into permanence. A domain beyond any cosmology, above the DC multiverse, beyond the Marvel Omniverse. They hovered in that void, massive yet formless, complex yet singular, and then came the conversation. "You are will," said Darkseid, his voice not sound but imposition. "You are choice, and that is the illusion. You are control," the Beyonder responded, more thought than tone. "And that is the corruption. You believe in freedom. I exist in it. I am it. Then you are chaos, disorder, entropy. No, I am the question, and you are the answer that ends asking." Darkseid's presence pulsed. Concepts within lower realities collapsed as his mind brushed them. In one corner of DC's vast cosmology, a Green Lantern screamed as his ring failed to comprehend what had just passed through it. Entire planes of potential began to tremble. Choice is suffering. Free will is a lie. There is peace in obedience. Peace? The Beyonder pondered, letting the thought unfold across billions of simulated minds in a blink. Peace is not stillness. Peace is harmony through variance. You seek unity through erasure. I seek unity through exploration. Freedom leads to fear. Fear leads to submission. Submission leads to me. Then you are the end of stories. I am. Then I am the beginning. Darkseid extended his thought across all of his avatars in every iteration. Even in Earth's far beneath this confrontation, his presence began to vibrate, causing apocalyptic disturbances. His power was not a beam nor a punch, it was a wave of inevitability. Anti-life spread like infection, cascading down logical ladders into Marvel's fabric, attempting to corrupt what had never been corrupted before. The Beyonder allowed it briefly. He tasted anti-life, observed it from within. It was an equation, yes, but also a decision, a statement of singular dominance. And yet it did not hold. The Beyonder had no mind to be swayed, no soul to be owned, no form to decay. He was an observer who could not be observed, a painter untouched by the canvas. "You are not inevitable," he said with curiosity. "You are recursive. You circle upon yourself endlessly. And you are arbitrary," Darkseid responded. "A dream of power without direction." Direction? The Beyonder pulsed now, amused. "Your direction is downward, compression, simplicity. My direction is outward, expansion, possibility. You deny freedom because it terrifies you, because it cannot be predicted. You are a god of fear, not of truth." Darkseid's essence tightened. His form, not truly a form but a shape imposed by his own narrative gravity, began to sharpen. His need to dominate flared, not out of emotion, but function. "You are an anomaly," Darkseid stated, "and anomalies must be corrected. And you are a limit," Beyonder replied, "and limits must be transcended." In that moment, the fissures of all realities cracked under pressure. The boundary between concept and manifestation blurred. In Marvel's multiverse, Uatu the Watcher staggered from his station, seeing echoes of a war that should not be. In the DC sphere, the Monitor turned away from his screens, feeling the collapse of narrative continuity. The two beings rose now, their consciousness forming visible profiles for the benefit of meaning. Darkseid, a towering geometrical shadow, wrapped in mathematical absolution. Beyonder, a shifting light that wore the echo of a man simply to make himself understood. The debate was over. The war was inevitable. In the next moment, all that was real would become irrelevant, and only truth, tested through unfathomable conflict, would remain. Reality bent under the pressure before the first blow was ever struck. The battlefield was not a planet, a realm, or even a plane of existence. It was the space between absolutes, the corridor between narrative and origin. Time did not apply. Here, cause and effect held no ground. Every movement was an echo of a deeper philosophical certainty. Every clash, the representation of metaphysical truth, asserting dominance. Darkseid moved first, though there was no movement, only the manifestation of his decree. His presence grew in weight, not in size, compressing the multiversal scaffolding like a neutron star within the mind of eternity. Entire universes in both DC and Marvel felt his will. In Marvel's sphere, eternity faltered. In DC's overvoid, entire narrative frameworks cracked. He spoke not with words, but with absolutes. Submit. And with that, the anti-life equation surged. Not as a weapon, but as an axiom. It wasn't hurled toward the Beyonder. It was imposed, injected into the very logic of the space they shared. But the Beyonder did not resist. He examined. The anti-life equation flooded toward him like a tsunami of inevitability, dragging behind it the weight of finality, the silence of lost will, the reduction of individuality to a single, dark point of control. It shattered ideas, swallowed egos, and erased purpose. And yet, Beyonder allowed it to enter. There was no recoil, no collapse. Instead, the anti-life was absorbed like a curiosity into an infinite well. And then it began to unravel, not because the Beyonder resisted, but because the logic of the equation had no root within him. It depended on the substrate of fear, of mind, of soul. Beyonder was none of these things. He was pre-definition, a being whose essence could not be conditioned by any law outside his own. Darkseid saw this, and it was the first time he had encountered not resistance, but irrelevance, and it disturbed the principle of control. With a mere flicker of intent, Darkseid's form changed, now expanding outward. He became a prism of finality, a fractal of inevitability. Omega energies cascaded from him, not as beams, but as vectors of destiny. They pierced into the foundational strata of Marvel's conceptual layers, targeting the Beyonder's connection to existence. The Omega Sanction, now applied on the level of Platonic idealism, attempted to break the Beyonder's nature across infinite lifetimes of reduction. The Beyonder split voluntarily. He divided himself across every possible variant of being, experiencing each level of Darkseid's assault in microcosm. In one moment, he became a human, trapped in an eternal loop of failure. In another, a god-denied godhood. In another, a construct, reduced to mere data in an imploding system. And then he reassembled, laughing, not with scorn, but with wonder. "You are recursive by nature," he mused. "All your forms rely on the same engine: reduction, suffering, collapse." "All paths end in me," Darkseid declared. "Only if you believe stories must end." Beyonder raised a single hand, not as a gesture of violence, but as a symbol of contemplation. From it erupted possibilities, not beams, not energies, but potentials. 1,000 universes blossomed in an instant, populated by species and concepts never imagined. Ideas took form, civilizations without hierarchy, beings without fear, sentience unbound by pain. Every one of them a rejection of anti-life, not because they resisted it, but because they rendered it obsolete. Darkseid surged forward, his conceptual mass crushing entire streams of reality. His presence swept through the constructs, extinguishing them like candles before a hurricane. The multiversal strain reached a breaking point. The bleed, the space between universes, quaked as it tried to hold the contradiction of both beings, truths. Even the one above all and the present stirred, silent observers, to a confrontation that threatened the very canvas they presided over. Now the war shifted, no longer philosophical, no longer symbolic. It became raw, unmediated power. Darkseid and Beyonder collided, not as fists or forces, but as meanings. Darkseid's punch collapsed the fundamental constants of 1,000 Earths. His will reshaped the spectrum of entropy itself. Stars reversed and aged into dust. Black holes detonated in violent rebirth. He struck not at form, but at the idea of Beyonder, attempting to overwrite the concept of freedom with his own existence. Beyonder responded in kind. His retaliatory presence didn't destroy, it rewrote. Where Darkseid unmade, Beyonder reimagined. He transformed broken laws of physics into newer, richer frameworks. He restored collapsed timelines, but made them aware of their collapse. He didn't repair. He evolved reality in real time. Darkseid's fury became seismic. He brought forth avatars of dread, weaponizing the full spectrum of apocalyptic creation. He summoned gods from forgotten realms, dark constructs that mirrored the raw hatred of the anti-life itself. They rushed Beyonder, each screaming the same absolute, "You will obey." Beyonder split again, but not to retreat. Each fragment became a reality, sentient, self-aware, self-justifying. The attackers were absorbed into these living worlds, challenged not with force, but with choice. One by one, they unraveled. Now, desperation tinged Darkseid's will. Not fear, never fear, but dissonance. For the first time, he was facing not an enemy, but a mirror. Not in nature, but in authority. And in that reflection, he saw something he could never comprehend. A being whose power came not from control, but from detachment. The Beyonder closed. The distance, his form now blazing with countless interpretations of himself, celestial, human, abstract, symbolic. He hovered before the true form of Darkseid. "You claim to be the end of all stories," he said, "but your story is trapped in a loop. You kill meaning. I give it birth." Darkseid raised the full weight of his being in a final act of dominion. Everything behind him, Apocalypse, the Source Wall, the stories of conquest and victory, fused into a singular blow. It came not as a punch, but as a narrative override, and Beyonder caught it. Not physically, existentially. He accepted the force of the end, absorbed it, and returned with a whisper, "Then let me show you a story that cannot be ended." And then he erased Darkseid, not with destruction, but with irrelevance. He stripped Darkseid of narrative significance. No defeat, no death, simply removal. Darkseid remained what he was, a force. But the Beyonder removed him from the lattice of consequence. He became a ghost in the firmament, unseen, unheard, unfelt, still present, but without reference. A page unturned, a word unsaid, and in that silence Beyonder stood alone, not as a conqueror, but as a concept that transcended conflict itself. The battle was over, not with triumph, but with transcendence. In confronting the embodiment of control, the Beyonder did not overpower it with strength, but with expansion. He rendered it obsolete, not by disproving its meaning, but by revealing its limitation. And in the stillness that followed, the multiverses continued, not as they were, but as they could. Be not dictated, but discovered.